Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. We're here with Ab. We're talking about the Browns now. Fun stuff going on in Cleveland, wouldn't you say, Ab? This has been one of the most interesting teams, I think, to cover in the league, because you never know what you're going to get. Well, you know what you're going to get, but you know that, like, the reaction is going to be wild to whatever it is that the Browns do. During the course of this time, right, I think I mentioned this concept to you. Andrew Berry's done a masterful job with the salary cap, right?
Right.
He's been able to manage the salary cap well. But there are two salary caps in my mind. There's the salary cap of the team, and then there is the salary cap of the patience of the fan base that watches the team. And look, we've done all that cap management, all that movement, but where it's become obvious to me that he has gone broke with these folks here, is that mental salary cap of fans, where it's like they have dealt with enough over the last 4 years. And it's not just like the winning and losing, because, win-loss wise, they've been much better than they were before. It's been the mental toll of, like, being put in this position where, in order to love this team you loved your whole life, you kind of gotta, like, deal with some garbage you did not sign up for when you decided to be a Browns fan for your life, And I think that is where you get this exhausted sentiment from fans. I think some fans just want something new to talk about, which is why there's such a heavy push for a quarterback this year in the draft, despite it not being a draft that experts say is great at that position. It is an awkward year, and this is a very awkward time. It's like the awkward teen stage of the Stefanski-Berry era. And what I want to know from your perspective is, how can the Browns find a way to be likable by the end of this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when we think about, obviously, the last few years with Watson. I do truly feel like that is rock bottom in terms of, like, how unlikable you can be as a team, from your own fan base, from everyone else in the league, that I actually think anyone else you throw out there this season it's just going to be easier than it would be having Watson out on that field, no matter what the play looks like, because at least you can, from a moral standpoint, have an easier time getting behind whoever that is. So I do think, at least in that way, it's positive. I think the reaction of fans will really depend on, number one, what they do in the draft. If they decide to go, let's say they were deciding to go like Shador with the second pick and bring in a vet, whether it's like Kirk or Rodgers or whoever that is. I think if they start with that veteran out there on the field, it's going to be a short leash for whoever that is, to want the rookie that they drafted to come in, regardless of who that rookie is. If it's Shador, if it's like a second, third rounder in Will Howard, I just think people are going to have short leashes with whoever starts this season. And they're going to be antsy pretty quick to make a change to a rookie, just because I think our patience has run out in a lot of ways. But I do think that having at least those options, having that person to be hopeful about in the background, like, a Shador or whoever that is, I think that'll keep fans, in a stable place, I guess.
I think Shador will give some people hope, but I think the also thing with Shador is he's very polarizing, and then you get the whole set. I feel it would be more of the same of kind of what we've been dealing with within the fan base, where it would be a lot of infighting.
True.
I think if we're gonna do a like this is a very Bill Simmons podcast combo, but if we're gonna do a likable draft, right? Like a draft that you could do to make people like you. I'm like, at
Yep.
quarterback, the number one guy you could go for is, I think, the most likable quarterback in this class. It's Jalen Milroe. Right? People might be
Yeah.
polarized about him and his play style, whatever it is, but let that man get up on the podium. He gonna do all the charity, right? Like I haven't confirmed that he wakes up at 4. Well, not wakes up. He's in the building at 4 a.m. watching film at Alabama. Like, wait till that stuff starts to hit. And everybody, like, it's gonna be Jacoby Brissett on steroids, where people are like, wow,
It's
like
gonna
this
be
dude.
the one of us conversations, and the posts are gonna be out of control then.
And let me tell you something about them Alabama dudes. They don't care about playing in no Cleveland. Like, they don't have no qualms about it. They do the be where your feet are mantra about it. So you're not going to have this, like with Shador, you're going to have this lingering thought, even if he's good. What if he wants to leave in free agent? We dealt with this with Donovan Mitchell, of all people, who made it clear that he loves Cleveland, like since the day he jumped off the plane. But like, that's going to be in the background of people's mind. I think the whole time
For
there is
sure.
like, oh, does he want to stay in Cleveland? Cam Ward's very nonchalant, which is like, that can be a problem at the quarterback position when it comes to likability, right? But Jalen Milroe, yeah, that dude's gonna be very likable. And then like in the preseason, you know he gonna crack off like a 50-yard touchdown run, and everybody gonna start seeing the vision of like, hey, maybe he can do this. He got a big arm too, so like he's gonna pass the eye test for everybody. Like that's the guy. I'm like, if you draft Jalen Milroe, it might not be immediate that you win the likability war, but by the time we get to September, that's going to be the most likable dude on the roster. The thing is, you probably going to have to play him, right? Like, and I don't know where it goes if you play him too early. But yeah, Jalen Milroe would probably be my pick at quarterback. I
Give
think,
everyone some training camp clips of him throwing a nice bomb to Jerry Jeudy. They're going to be fed for months just off of that.
oh yeah. Let's bring back Nick Chubb. Have him toss an option to Nick Chubb, get people excited that way.
The Nick Chubb portion of it is another, I think, part of the likability thing of this team, that if they can manage to get that man back in the building, I think that'll make a lot of people very happy, regardless of how much they intend on even using him. I think it's just him being there will mean a lot to a lot of people, and at least from that perspective, calm people down.
Yeah, yep. And look, to the people who are going to comment, who cares if they're likable? I just care if they win. Y'all care if they're likable, dog. I've done this long enough. Like, y'all definitely care if they're likable. Like, absolutely. Hey, look, we were, the same record with Deshaun we had with Joe Flacco? I know y'all enjoyed a certain half of that experience more than the other half of it. 'Cause I was there. I was covering it. Y'all weren't that thrilled. And then Joe Flacco come around. They become much more likable. We having a good time. So to the person I know is going to get like 40 upvotes saying, I don't care if they're likable. I just care if they win. We're having fun. It's the middle of like March, y'all. So like, let us have fun. But also, y'all do care if they're likable, whether they win or not. You care, absolutely do care if they're likable.
I mean, when you think back to like the Baker Mayfield years, like people really cared about us being like this like lovable underdog at that point. Like people want to be that. Even if you say we just care about winning, you're like, no, we want people to be like this. Wow, look at this team like coming from nothing and being something. People always want to be that.
And I will also point this one out. I've heard countless stories from my elders about the 80s Browns. You ain't heard one person tell you about that 1994 team that went to the second round of the playoffs. Like, we don't ever hear stories about that team. That team was good, right? Like, we don't know. Bill Belichick, unlikable. They cut Bernie Kosar, unlikable. Y'all didn't like that team, right? So we don't have 94 Browns All-Stars like we got 80s Browns All-Stars that have become cemented into the minds of people who grew up Browns fans. But anyways, who would you take next in your likability draft? If you could draft players that you're like, hey, this would make it a lot funner to watch the Browns and a lot easier to stomach some ups and downs with the team because I feel much better about who's on it.
I think from name alone, and this isn't necessarily even a super likable player. Like, I think he's had his moments as well. But if this Brandon Ayuk thing actually happens, I do think that will get fans excited. It's a known name. He's had success with the 49ers. I think as good as like Jerry Jeudy was last season, I do think we still probably could use some more options at receiver. I don't think you can ever be too comfortable from that position. So I think if that trade were to come to fruition, I genuinely think fans would get very excited about that. Now, once the season actually starts, if Brandon Ayuk starts having some problems, maybe that changes. But I think temporarily, that's one to get people happy.
I saw somebody comment. They were like, "How long are we going to keep taking other people's trash at wide receiver?" And it's like, "Hey, man, we are recycling greatly." Like,
Yeah.
the Cowboys didn't want Amari, we took Amari, cool, right? Like the Denver Broncos didn't want Jerry, we took Jerry. I trust the Browns on these kind of trades. Like Andrew Berry has fully earned my trust when it comes to this stuff. The next person on the likable draft, bring in Travion Hendrickson. That right there, he's heavily associated with the championship Buckeyes, right? Ride the coattails of the Buckeyes a little bit, right? Very likable team. Travion might be the most likable guy on the right because he's the dude that's been there, right? Of all of these other guys that were, quick transfers in, 1-year guys at Ohio State, Trey's had a history at Ohio State. Fans have gone up and down with Trey during his career at Ohio State. Now, did he start at Virginia Tech?
I don't think so. Well, I don't think so.
I think he was recruited by Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I don't think he
but I don't think he ever went.
ever actually played there.
But Trey, I'm like, one, awesome player. So he's going to be fun. You can fit him in with Nick Chubb, right? Yeah. So you don't have to lose Nick Chubb to bring him in. I don't want to bring in somebody. Like, if you take Caleb Johnson, my big fear is, like, that you're going to have to not bring back Nick Chubb because of Caleb Johnson. And I don't want that for that young man to have to deal with that. Like, that's not going to be fair to him. But Trey can coexist with Nick Chubb. You can have a fun little 1-2 punch with them.
Yep.
And Trey hits home runs, right? Trey hits home runs and Trey blocks. So does all the things fans love. I think you go Trey, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Milroe at quarterback, get the fans some hope there in the second round. We're building a much more I think this is like we're getting closer to a team. We're like, hey, man, might be a little excited, right? Like,
yep. Another option at quarterback that I think, just from the Ohio perspective, since you were talking about Travion Henderson, is Will Howard. Like, I don't think from maybe a on-field perspective, obviously the ceiling of what he could be is quite there, and fans probably wouldn't end up being very happy with it in the long run. But in terms of something that like people would get behind, I think he's a guy, and he's a very likable kid too. Just like nice kid. I feel like has. Doesn't have anything that would concern people in any way. So I think that would be one that people would be pretty happy about.
That'd be a fun one to go RG3 Kirk Cousins on, where you go like Milroe 33 and then swing back if like he's there in the 5th and go Will Howard there if he falls for whatever reason. I think that'd be a fun name to go. Let me see. Is there anybody else in this draft that's available or free agency that I can think of that I'm like, no, that would the fans would feel differently? Because like the prospect of starting Kirk Cousins, he's not the most likable quarterback. People have all kind of hot takes about Kirk built up. Russ, insanely like unlikable at this point. I think kind of unfairly so. Like Russ's crime is that he's corny, and he gets like hate that like people who've actually done crimes like don't get. Let's see, Aaron Rodgers
together in the same locker room in New York is going to be the funniest thing.
And people think they're going to draft Shador to add to that, and I'm like, that would be interesting to see. Like,
yeah, and in terms of like the other options the Browns can take with their second pick, or the second pick in the first round of the draft, I feel like none of the other ones are going to get people like so pumped. Like Abdul Carter is a good pick, but I don't think people are going to be like, this changes everything for us. Like now we're a contending team. Or like Travis Hunter, great player. I'm sure both of them would be like fantastic additions that would make our team a lot better. But in terms of like getting people's hopes up of being this like likable team. I don't know if either of them will do that as much.
I think Travis Hunter would,
Yeah.
because that is the most explosive college football player I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And he's another guy that's going to be like, yeah, people get excited. We'll spend an annoying amount of the summer arguing about if he should play both sides, what the Browns plan. Like, that's going to be annoying. But you know what's going to be very fun? Them camp phone clips that come out with Travis Hunter, where we're like, oh, he's cooking. Like wait till he gets on a one-on-one and he gets an interception and a touchdown in the same day. And Cam Justice got the footage on both of those, and it's like, okay, the excitement's happening, right? With Abdul, there ain't gonna be no excitement till the football actually starts playing, because what you gonna do at edge? You don't really play football until the start of the season. Now, once we get to like November and they get comfortable enough with him, and you see both him and Miles, dribbling in the A gap on the double mug, then we're gonna be like, oh, I see the vision. Maybe these people knew what they were talking about with that dual Carter. Maybe he's really good. I
just have like the perfect picture in my head of both of them like Euro stepping around. Like,
I want to see the alley oop. Like, I want to see Abdul Carter started out like the point guard, right? Yeah. Miles screen for him, and then he goes up, jumps up, guard goes, what is going on? And then Abdul shoots through, right? Gets the two, Darius Garland style, right? And then he does the Darius kiss to the crowd.
So good.
Yeah, I need that pick and roll.
I agree with you too that I feel like Abdul Carter's like that's longer term going to be something that'll get people excited. That won't have the initial like, oh yeah, like this, let's go, this changes everything. But he's still, in terms of where I'm at with what I want to do in the draft right now, that's still where I'm at, is wanting to take Abdul Carter there. So we'll see. I don't always go for the short term excitement as much as I do the long term benefits.
Yeah, at 2, I feel like you have to go long term here. And that's where I'm like, I am at a place where I'm like, I prefer Carter, but man, I'm not going to be mad at Travis Hunter at 2.
Yeah.
I cannot.
That's a long term pick too. Like, I think the short term vision would be taking one of the quarterbacks right there. Like, I think that wouldn't be the same as, taking one of those two guys that could be actual, like, I think franchise pieces that you have future contracts for.
Yeah, because my fear with quarterback is that we're going to be happiest about taking a quarterback the day after we do it. It's going to be the happiest we are going to be about like, and that's the thing I think people forget is like, I think that's what people are advocating for when they are like screaming about drafting a quarterback and how we need this shot in the arm as a fan base. It's like, it's a shot in the arm that doesn't even take you to the regular season, right? Whereas like Jalen Milroe is not a guarantee to be anything in the NFL. But what I do know with Jalen is he's going to be one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL automatically right away. And if you put him in there, there's a floor there with his athletic ability. There's a possibility that like you get very bad quarterback play out of anybody that's drafted number 2, at least in year 1. Yeah. And like, as much as that'll jolt you after you do it, it's like drinking alcohol, right? Like that hangover could be vicious. We're living through like this to me feels like, hey man, you ever get this advice in college? It's the dumbest advice you get, but it's like, what cures a hangover?
Drinking more.
Drunk, right? Like getting drunk again, right? Like nothing cures a hangover like another night of drinking, right? And this is what it feels like. We are on the hangover of hangovers right now. And we don't want to hear nothing about eating no grapes, getting some water-filled nutrients into our body or eating some food. We're like, I want this to be over as quick as possible. Let me get drunk again so I can push this hangover another 3 months, right? This feels like trying to avoid a hangover by drinking, by drafting a quarterback here, because it just doesn't feel like the year to go quarterback. But I think the long-term method, right, like going in for things that will benefit you long-term. I would argue if you want something that's going to make you win games short-term, you could draft Ashton Jeanty number 2 overall. That's going to make you immediately better fast, right? Yeah. The problem is I don't know how sustainable that level of success would be. But I think Abdul having not worrying about Miles' 1-2 punch And then
Yeah.
having a guy you can slide in, like he could replace some of what JOK can do if JOK can't come back in time. Or, if he does come back, you can put him in harm's way less often because you don't have to send JOK like a heat-seeking missile, right? You can keep JOK back and let that be Abdul Carter that does that. So, yeah,
I think
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just going to say, I think the other piece of it that like I've really been contemplating is when it comes to the front office and the coaching staff, I feel like people are wondering like how much time they feel like they have to correct this because that could influence the pick that they choose. I mean, we've seen that time and time again throughout the history of the NFL where, a front office or a coach feels like they don't, they only have 1 year to get things right, so they make picks based on that. Or if I think a lot of people feel like if they do take Shador at 2, that Jimmy's going to give them more time to get it right because you don't usually give someone 1 year. But I'm with you. I don't feel that way. I feel like if things were to go badly with Shador in year 1, Jimmy would still be ready to can. I don't think that's going to affect things.
Here's what I worry about when people say that, like, oh, it's going to give them extra time. They might get fired next year. That's why they need to draft a quarterback. That's the last thing you would do because if it looks like a rookie quarterback, you run the risk of somebody panicking in the front office or Jimmy panicking and saying, oh my God, what happened to Deshaun's about to happen to this kid. We need to fire everybody, right? Yeah. To save this dude we drafted number 2 overall because now that guy becomes a priority. And if you're going to make that guy the priority, he really needs to be worth it or have the potential to be worth it. Or else you're setting yourself back. So yeah, I think we'll find out a lot about what the job security is like. If the Browns are, they're normal, patient, sometimes to a false self, right? We know Andrew loves to wait. And he's demonstrated this offseason he's not going to panic under pressure. Did it with Myles Garrett. It worked out for the team with Myles Garrett. So we'll see. All signs point to they're not going to panic under pressure. They're going to make a choice that makes sense for them. And as much as they do need a quarterback, I think they're going to go where the talent is at 2. Now, I am fascinated with this whole Milroe thing. I just got to watch like 7 of his games, and I do think that there's a chance they might like find it necessary to jump back into the first round for him. And I wonder how aggressive they get with that because let's imagine Tommy Rees is saying like, no, this kid, we can do something with him, right? And look, the closer I get to people who were there in Alabama with Milroe, the more and more people are like, confident that this kid, like his problems are very fixable. And I wonder where scouts are going to be very different on Milroe than coaches, but I wonder where coaches are with Jalen because I look at him and then like the part of me that tries to evaluate, I see problems that worry me, but the part of me that like feels like a coach should fix that is like,
yeah,
if there's somebody to fix it, man, like the Brown system makes sense for him. And I wonder how much they value that, like where they value that at. I think Milroe, I'm interested to see what happens to him because I think he could be the surprise of the draft this year. Because again, he runs 4.3. Okay, like
insane.
Yeah,
we haven't had an athletic quarterback of that level like ever.
What I think the only one that comes close is RG3, and he's a much better open field runner than RG3, right?
Yeah.
Like he is. That's the thing. Like top speed wise, he's not like the natural bendy runner that like Lamar is. Nobody will ever be Lamar Jackson as a runner, nor is he the natural passer that Lamar is, and has the natural touch on his football that Lamar has. But like, it's like he has more wiggle than like Colin Kaepernick did, right? But he's faster than Colin Kaepernick. Not as big, but just as hard to tackle, I would imagine. It's fascinating. And I think he got, like I was talking to Kyron Samuels, who covers like the SEC area in Colorado, and he was telling me, he's like, I feel like he got punished for being that first team of Alabama that's not like the Alabama we grew up with,
That's
right?
valid.
So he's
Yeah.
getting punished for that perception of Alabama dipping while he's there. But I mean, that fall off was happening with Alabama years in the coming. And even then, they came one play away from beating the national champion, and you would presume
For sure.
winning a national championship against Washington that year. So.
Right.
You know, it's funny how it goes, but if Milroe played at a different school, do we look at his career a lot differently than we do now?
Yeah.
And does that change your perception of him? Like if he played at Arkansas, like or Ole Miss or something else, like does that change how you view it? Because you view him at Alabama as a little bit of a failure because he didn't win a national championship.
Right. Yeah, the expectations are like totally different. Yeah, and with how many quarterbacks that school is sent to the NFL, I think that probably plays a role into it too. Like there's, you know, one just won the Super Bowl, so you know, like it's kind of.
And he was the dude who got benched.
Yeah, yeah, literally.
Like he was the guy who got benched and had to watch them win 2 national championships, I believe, right? Like so. Alabama was just at such a ridiculous place, and it just wasn't like that his last few years when he got to get control of Alabama. And this last year, like again, because it's Alabama, people are looking at it differently than like they look at Shador losing 3 games at Colorado. But because he's at Alabama, we think, oh, his offensive line was amazing. It was not. We think his wide receivers were amazing. Ryan Williams was really good, but he still was 17. Like, he hit a wall at a point during the season. He didn't catch as much. He's going to be long, tall Garrett Wilson by the time he's 20 and ready to be drafted. Don't get me wrong here. But, you know, just the talent wasn't what you thought it would be around Alabama. They weren't overwhelming teams like they used to. So we're looking at him with that Alabama lens of like, hey, everybody, you're playing with the best players. So, you know, you're elevated, right? So it doesn't really matter what you do, but that's not the Alabama he played for last year, right? And I think if you look at him like that, then things start to come into fruition.
Right.
There's so much there with Milroe that I think is fascinating.
It is interesting how much I think reputations can like infiltrate the NFL conversations, because we even saw it happen the other way with CJ Stroud and everyone being like, Ohio State quarterbacks are never good in the NFL. Don't take them. They never work out, you know, and there's those things that linger that, you know, instead of actually just kind of looking at the player more individually and or just the context around the team that they were on. And then obviously CJ has been, you know, a really talented NFL quarterback. So it is funny how much those conversations, I think, can affect the individual players and everything else gets ignored.
Yeah, and like it's even happening with Abdul, where people are like, oh, foot injury, Penn State. Oh, my God, it's Courtney Brown, right?
Yeah,
Whereas, like, it's got
for
nothing
sure
in common with Courtney Brown. Like Courtney Brown was like a giant player, like, you know, but he's more in common with like LeVar Arrington, who did go number 2 that year, right? Ended up being an all-pro. But yeah, it's like these things linger and stay, and you have these expectations of these players based off of where they played in college, and then you have things that you deduct from them, right? Because they played at these places in college. And I'm like, when I look at Milroe, I'm like, I see somebody who caught the raw end of that deal, because Alabama was not Alabama while he was there, right? Like either of those years, even the Alabama team that almost beat the national champion that year, we weren't talking about that as a great Alabama team for most of the year. We were actually surprised they won the SEC championship that year, right? Like if you look at him because he played at Alabama, you don't really think of him as an underdog. But if you look at him, and look at where those teams were, I'm like, they weren't the favorite the year they won the SEC that year. That was a surprise. And, like, you can argue Milroe helped that Alabama team overperform last year. Look, you watch that Alabama defense last year and that offensive line, I think without Milroe, they don't even entertain a bowl game. Like, that is a 5, because, like, all the turnover they had, they lost, like, 32 players to the portal. Like, you know, that was a team that went through a lot of turmoil, but having Jalen Milroe did give them a floor. And we're not thinking about it like he gave them a floor. We're like, oh, my God, Alabama won, 9 games? Only 9 games? And I wonder if 5 years from now, if he does pan out, if that's one of the things we look at and go, that's why we missed it, right? Like that's why we didn't see it at all because we were too caught up in the expectations of the Saban era with a dude like him. I don't know what to do with him. But I'm at the point now where I'm like, all right, take him at 33. Like if he's there at 33, if you want to call your twin brother Andrew and get 32, swap, do it. I have no problem with it. Yeah, do what you got to do. Just get a discount. Make it like a 6th-round pick that you have to give up for that. But I'm at the point where I'm like, if they believe in it, that's the one guy I'm like, I can kind of believe in it. Like, you know, I don't want to spend 2 on it, but I can kind of believe on it.
Right. Well, and especially like we're at a point where the options that we have to move forward with are limited. The only quarterback we have right now on this roster is Kenny Pickett. Like we don't have a lot to work with.
We are not starting off great in the likability war right now, with Kenny Pickett being the only quarterback on the roster right now, you know? And we talked about this during the season, right? The Browns, they move shrewd, but they're so callous sometimes that I wish that they understood that, like, hey, man, people got to stomach this shit. Like you got to make this a little bit easier to stomach. Like what they're doing with Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
We know what they're doing. They're probably going to try to bring him back on a cheap deal. But boy, are you making it hard for people to stomach it, right? Like, you know, you could have just cut the extra $500,000 that you weren't going to get and just been like, all right, bring him back on 4. Like, just call it what it is, right? But sometimes they want to make the best move possible to the point where they don't care how it looks. And I just wish just a little bit. Just a little bit. Maybe I'm being selfish because I got to talk about this team for a living, but just make it easier for people to enjoy this team.
Yeah,
like,
there's the human element to it. Yeah, you gotta, people feel things, especially I think, you know, they have to take into consideration how hard last year was on everyone, where it's like, all right, just give us a few things to hold on to for a little bit because that was brutal. Okay, what you just put us through.
They need an emotional intelligence officer in that front office because I would have been in there like, hey, man, you got to re-sign Nick Chubb before you announce this damn Kenny Pickett trade. Okay, like you need to like, hey, y'all, we brought back Nick Chubb. All right. Yeah. By the way, we traded for Kenny Pickett. What? But Nick Chubb's back, y'all. Batman, back in the building. Like, they need to handle this stuff better, right? Like, you cannot beat a team that's okay with trading for Deshaun Watson and handle stuff like this. Right. Like, this is eventually going to get on people's nerves to the point where where you might be good at a job, but they get you out of here because they're tired of it.
Yep. And we're driving ourselves so insane now that we get excited over any rumor, like the Dak stuff this week. It was just like, we're getting we're getting way too deep into things that aren't going to happen because we have literally nothing else to go off of because we have one random quarterback on our roster right now. Yeah.
Again, it's been my long-term criticism of Andrew Berry on top of other things. It's just like, hey, man, y'all got to make it feel a little bit better than y'all do. Like, y'all got to make a little bit of an effort to sell it to folk. I understand you don't think that matters to wins or losses, but, like, it do matter for the other people in the building. They got to sell season ticket packages. Like, you trying to sell a dome to the city right now, and you out here just kicking it super unlikable. And it matters a little bit. Like, it's not the whole thing. It's not going to change how many games they win and lose. But boy, do you feel different about being able to stomach if the Browns were in a position where they truly had to rebuild. It would be impossible to stomach right now because they've made it impossible to stomach. And I think that is like you buy yourself some grace with folk when you handle things well. And that's the thing I think the Browns kind of have struggled with is like separating an analytics-based decision or a numbers-based decision or a logic-based decision with understanding the emotional toll of that decision.
Well, I think we've talked about it on here before too, where it like has infiltrated their evaluation of players that they want to either draft or bring in. Like we talked about it with the Deshaun decision, that they like overlooked the like human element portion of it, or when they've done like the Perion draft pick or those type of things that sometimes they do everything so on paper that like, okay, analytically and, you know, by all the numbers we're looking at, we should do this. but forgetting kind of the fan human side of things is it's important. Like you said, it's not everything, but it's a factor for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're gonna have to. If that's where they have to get better if they want to be the long lasting regime that they hope to be. But Ab, thank you for coming on here. Where can everybody find your work?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky, Abby underscore Mueller underscore. I have my own YouTube channel where I do different Browns, Cavs, maybe some Guardians content coming up. Season kicked off today there. So that's Just a Girl from Cleveland. My podcast is Just a Girl from Cleveland on Apple, Spotify as well, and all of those are on YouTube too. So check me out there. But yeah, we're just gonna plow through these next few months until we get to the draft and have something actual concrete to talk about. But we'll have fun guessing what it's gonna be till then.
Absolutely, absolutely. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.